All right, everyone. Welcome to a very exciting episode of, well, there's a lot going on here. So first things first, this is part 8 of how to put a supercharged V6 into your Chevy S10 or any rear-wheel drive car for that matter. Now, if you're new here, this does not look like a Chevy S10. And if you are a returning subscriber, first off, thank you for coming back. You know that this is a Chevy S10. This is my 1969 Chevy Corvair on a 1996 Chevy S10 frame and running gear. Or at least not the running gear anymore, because we got a supercharged V6 up in the front. Mechanically speaking, this still is technically a Chevy S10. Now, these are ZZP's fuel logs for the L67, just the supercharged 3800s. And so, man, I did not think this intro through very well. So, basically, we're doing the fuel lines on how to put the supercharged 3800 into your S10, but we're also going to be installing these because I really wanted these, and since day one of this swap, I said I hated the stock fuel lines, fuel rails, just the stock fuel system on the 3800s because it's just really ugly, and it's just the fuel lines going over top of the supercharger just ruins the look of the supercharger for me. So I spent some money and I bought these, and these were not cheap. These were right about $300. So that's very expensive, but this is something that I've wanted for a long time, so we are going to install these. Now, if you are here on how to do fuel lines for your S10 3800 swap, we'll get into that right now, because this is going to be one of the easiest things to do on this swap. So let me put these down and I'll explain. Okay, this video is being filmed a few days after I just wrapped up the wiring video, but not the wiring. The wiring is still not done, so we're not going to talk about it. But anyway, these are the fuel lines that you heard me talking about. I just think they're really ugly. I've never liked them, and yeah, they're not good. So, this is, when I say going to be the easiest thing on this swap, let me explain how. So on a stock Chevy S10, at least the 4 cylinders, if I'm not mistaken, the fuel lines go along the frame rail and then go over on the cross member, the transmission cross member, and then go above the transmission and come up right in this general area. And at that point, all you have to do is cut the top of the fuel lines off because you no longer have it going into an S10. You just want the bare tube, you know, just nothing. And then all you have to do is take rubber line, connect it to the supercharger fuel rail, and go down and connect it to the S10 fuel lines. And that's it. You're done. You have officially done your fuel lines. It's just that simple. A few things to note. Keep in mind, you know which one is your intake and which one is your return. And one easy way to see is your main fuel line is the thicker line. I believe that is 3/8. And your thinner tube is your return. Now, I know on the newer 3800s, I think like 2005 on up, they did not have a return system. So there's that. The other thing is there's actually 3 fuel lines from the gas tank on a 96. One of them is vent, the other one is return, and the other one is the main fuel line. The vent line, just leave him alone. Let him live. He's just venting. Just let him be. So there is one thing that I didn't mention, and that's when I was doing this swap, I accidentally dropped the fuel line, and it created a siphon effect, and it started siphoning all of the fuel out of the tank, and I freaked out, and in a moment of desperation, I kinked the fuel line to keep it from siphoning, and I basically destroyed the fuel line. And so I was like, whatever, I'll just make new fuel lines, and so that's what I did, is these lines here are brand new fuel lines, or kind of brand new. They're made out of aluminum fuel line. And I never really liked how they were because they're just kind of ugly and they rub up against, and aluminum is really thin. And so my fear was that they would eventually wear a hole through the line and then bam, right onto my exhaust, it would blow the car up. I actually had to change the clutch on this a few days ago. And while I had the transmission out, I took this video to show you guys why it's so important to not let aluminum fuel lines rub on things. So here's that footage from a few days ago. This is underneath my car, changing out the clutch. And these are the crappy fuel lines that I made. So you can see they come off the original fuel lines that were then cut and then come up and snake around the transmission. I was not able to see what I was doing because there's a transmission in the way. This is why I'm changing them, because aluminum is very thin, and just in the 10-15 miles that I've driven this car, these have just sat there and rattled together and they're already wearing down. So don't do it like this unless, you know, you want your fuel line to break under your hot exhaust and then your car goes up in flames. So this is me changing the clutch. I thought this would be a good time to show you guys what not to do for your fuel lines. Yeah, I'll admit, it wasn't my proudest install, mainly because when I installed the lines, the transmission was already in. So there's that. So we are going to start on the fuel lines. We're actually going to start with the installation of the fuel logs. However, I want my fuel lines to come from this direction on over. So halfway through, I'm going to get rid of those fuel lines and have them run up along the frame rail and then come up along the side and then into here. I'll let you guys look at this. This is the main fuel line intake that goes into a T and then nothing. And then it crosses over here and goes into here and then crosses back over into the fuel pressure regulator. And then this is your return line, which needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So that's how that goes together. Okay, so I just fired it up with the fuel pump off. It fired up for a second and then shut off because obviously there's no fuel. So there shouldn't be any fuel in here and it shouldn't hopefully be pressurized. So we're going to take a few minutes getting everything out of here. I'm going to remove this V-band clamp to get my throttle body off of there and just kind of clear some stuff up out of the way. And then we can get access to our fuel lines. Alrighty, so I just removed the throttle body here. And then I'm just kind of getting some of this wiring out of the way. So we got these little spring clips that hold on the plugs to the injectors, and if you are not holding on to them with the pliers, they will go flying across your shop at 1,000,000 miles per hour, and you'll never see them again. So there's that. Side note, which we are going to talk more about later, the way that I had this pipe welded on to bend the supercharger around, it's really close to the fuel rail here as well as the injector wire. I have a little fear that we're going to run into some problems when I install the fuel logs. So I said this before during the supercharger video. I would highly recommend waiting until your engine is in the car before you modify the supercharger, just because I did it that way and I've ran into so many little problems. So just something that I'd recommend. Now there is I believe 4 bolts that hold on the fuel rails. However, there's also these clips that hold the injectors on to the fuel rail as well. So we need to disconnect those. These are what they look like. They just slide off. Again, spring loaded, so, you know, don't lose those. So let's get those off really quick. Ugh. There is a bolt on the top here. And that is I don't know what it is. That is a 13mm head bolt on the, well, I guess it's a stud, but that is what that is on the top there. Ooh. That ain't good. Dang. Well, this sucks. It doesn't fit. It's really close to fitting here. Do you guys like remember like 10 minutes ago when I was like, hey, make sure you get the engine in your car before you modify the supercharger? This is another perfect example of why you want to do that. I wonder though if I could ever so gently just take a flap disc and kind of smooth him up a little bit. Well, this is not going the way it's supposed to. All right, so just ground down, whoops, quite a bit of this. If it would ever so kindly focus, thank you. You can see it was more squared off and just ground it down. I didn't even get close to getting inside there, so I think we'll be okay. I might grind down a little more. Yeah, dang. This is still going to work. It's just unfortunate that a few hiccups have gotten in the way this early into the install. Bear with me on the filming. You're probably... It's gonna be so close. I can probably even try to grind that down a little more. And then with the injector on, I couldn't get it on the stud there in the back. So I just took one of these funky looking guys and took the stud out, and then I'll put the stud back through. So get him again. I'm really sorry for the camera work right here. So she's gonna be close, but I think I'll be able to make it work. I think I'm still gonna try to grind that down a little more. Let's see what we can do about that. Just a little, literally right there on the top. I think that's all it needs. So let's do that quick. Yeah, this looks much better already. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, you've weakened the structural integrity of this. And I'm just like, this is going to see like a maximum of 60 PSI fuel pressure. I didn't weaken anything. So, but make sure when you do grind that to take off the O-ring. You don't want to melt that because this thing got hot. Okay, we got this all put back together. I'm running stock injectors. These are the OEM injectors. For a few reasons. One, they still work just fine, and I don't need bigger injectors because I'm running stock power. And also, injectors are really expensive, and I don't feel like dropping $200 some for new injectors. So these will work just fine. So let's get this installed, and we'll see next. Oh, actually, before we even do that, we are going to install the intake line because that's going to be really hard to do underneath the car. So let's get that installed quick. Okay, so few things to notice. The bracket is running into the supercharger. That one will fit a little bit, but this one here is also, see how the hole won't line up? The bracket is running right into the supercharger there. So I need it to go over because I got that to clear. It's going to be a hell of a clearance though, but see if I bend that over so it fits, and then this one doesn't fit, and if I bend him over, then this one doesn't fit. So not good. Okay, so we got this installed. This piece here, whoops, not even filming. This piece here is pretty long. You can see it runs in my wiring harness, and of course this is not going to be staying here. I was thinking maybe I'd be able to put it in a brake line bender, but I was like, you know, maybe I shouldn't bend one of the factory pieces. So it's going to be tight, but I'm going to put either a rubber hose because I might be able to get a better, tighter bend on it or something. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do here yet. But what I do know is the snake nest of wiring is not staying here, so I think I'll be okay with that. I also cannot get it tight with my supercharger in the way, so I'm going to see if I can take that off, tighten it up, and then call it good. And then this side, I think we're going to install this side as well, because this also needs to be tightened down, but I think that might be a little easier to get to with that in the way. So let's install this side. And it just doesn't stop. Always something. We were doing good. However, the AN fitting, which is a 45 degree, runs right into my thermostat housing that I made from scratch. I actually didn't make it. Someone else did. I can say confidently that those welds aren't mine. Anyway, it's literally right there, and it just will not go. What a crap show this has been today. I got out here early, tried to hit it early, and just setback after setback. So, okay. The good news is that I don't think I need these 90-degree bends, which is really good because those were $30. I was able to take the 90-degree bend there, that was on that side, and flip it over, and it works there. But then my problem was this piece was not sharp enough. So I got this 90-degree bend from my local construction company, and I think this will work. We're about to find out, and if it doesn't, I'm going to lose my mind. But if that works, that will be better. You want to know how much this was? Want to know how much this hydraulic fitting was? Comment down below. Comment what you think it is. This was $25. $25. Does this fit? And if it's close, I will be able to grind down the top of this. But let's find out. Oh my gosh, how glorious and wonderful it fits. Wow, what a waste of a day. I just want to quick start off by saying if you are getting ZZP fuel rails, this really is a fairly simple install. You should be able to figure it out on your own. I just decide that I actually hate myself and I want to make everything difficult, and so that's why we're here right now. So I have completely removed the supercharger. It is unbolted. I have already had it off. You can see this is here, nice and tucked up out of the way. I like that. I like that it comes up here. It's up against the black firewall, so it's hard to see. And then it snakes down underneath. You can see that. Lots of nice room there. And then it will go into the fitting there. Okay, little update for you guys. So we got that here. I don't think I'll have any clearance issues with that piece. Comes down and around. It hugs the firewall nice and tight. To keep it from kind of rattling, I am going to put a clamp and screw it into the firewall. And then that comes down and then bends and goes into here, which I already have attached. As far as clearance goes on that, you can barely see it. I'm sorry about the camera work here, but look at that. It literally has like a couple thousandths of an inch there in clearance. So that is good. And I just want to say, if I would have kept the S10 fuel lines in their factory location, which is what I tried to do with these homemade ones that look like crap. Look, oh, what's that? Man, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Okay, so this bracket here that originally went like that, and then this was upside down like that, unfortunately is too low. You can see I've bent my fuel line there, and it won't fit. And I didn't want to put it all the way up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bolt this down and bolt this down and basically find where that will sit nicely and then mark it and re-weld this, and then all of that will be perfect, dandy, good to go. I think we'll be done, just about done. And then the only other thing is we just have to trim this line up a little bit because that's just gonna be too long. I don't want it sticking out like that. I want it nice and tucked up against the supercharger. Alrighty, slowly but surely getting things together. This is the fuel pressure regulator off the old fuel rail with the lock ring in there. This sucked having to get in. I literally had to clamp it in my bench vise to squeeze it together, but it went in. It like popped in. And then, this bracket here, you can see that I cut it and then moved it up, and that gave me literally the perfect amount of clearance that I needed. So I like that. And then I had to shorten this up about, oh man, maybe about 1.5 inches or so. It just sucked having to get this piece back on here. And then the only other thing that I did is I put one of these hose clamps here into the supercharger to help hold that into place. So, and then I've also just been slowly reassembling everything, got the supercharger back on. Okay, so now we are working up above here. And so basically this is 3/8 fuel line, but this piece, which is the return, is 1/4 inch. And obviously 3/8 is a lot bigger than 1/4 inch. So what I did is there was that ridge, this like this piece right here, that I pushed past and got it really far in there, and then a hose clamp here and a hose clamp here. And this is how I did it back when I first put the body on the car. I did it on the return line, and it worked just fine. So we are going to be just fine doing this. The only 1/4 inch fuel line on this entire car will now be just this single piece here. And then the rest will all be 3/8. So I think we'll be good. I really don't think we're going to have any problems. So we'll get this button back up. We'll attach the fuel line there, and then we'll kind of start putting everything back together up here. Because I think we're just about done up here now that I think about it. We'll just need to finish doing the fuel lines down below. I'm a genius. So I have this leftover piece of AN line. This was the actual crossover portion that I replaced with the line that I got from Napa. And I was looking, I was like, well, that's a 45, and this is already 3/8 fuel line. And it's not that I don't trust the homemade flare there, but I'm like, this has everything already properly made. And I was like, well, this screws into there. And at that point, I could just bend it around and do one of those. So I'm going to. Yeah, holy crap, that works out really well. And I think instead of like cutting it down, I think, you know, I'll just have that run the entire length of that and then just hose clamp it a few times. I like that a lot more because then I don't need hose clamp, hose clamp, hose clamp, hose clamp. This is already clamped on. I just need that. Oh my gosh, I'm such a genius. All right, we got that on. That ended up working really well. You can just see him under there. This I could not get on, so I had to boil water. And then dip the end in there so it would like expand and become malleable. Malleable, if I use that word right. And it worked. It just sucked getting that on, but I like how that looks a lot more. I do think if they make a really nice fancy fitting for like hose clamps, just something to kind of clean it up, get rid of the trashy hose clamp look, I'm gonna do that. So I like that though. So I think we're just about done up here with exception of vacuum lines, but that doesn't really pertain to fuel lines, so we'll get to that later. I think what's next is we're going to see about getting the old fuel lines out and then continuing underneath the car with like the insulation portion and running the fuel lines. Hopefully we can finish this up here soon. Okay, so we're underneath the car. My dad helped me run the fuel lines. They actually look really nice up top. They're not done here. Keep in mind we also have the old fuel lines. So I'm using some factory holes to use as mounting locations to hold the fuel lines on, of course. The only problem is, you know, you don't want metal rubbing on metal, especially aluminum on steel. And if you look right up here, my aluminum fuel lines will be rubbing on the steel body. So we don't want that, of course. So what we're going to do is I have this fuel line, this really big fuel line. Actually, I think this might actually be vacuum line. I don't know. But the aluminum hose fits perfectly inside of this. So we're going to basically insulate the aluminum fuel line with this really big gas line here, or vacuum line, whatever it is. And as you can see, pretend this is my fuel line. Just slips over oh so nicely. So I'm going to use that up there to insulate a lot of this. Not all of this, because not all of this needs to be insulated, but anywhere where it's going to be rubbing on metal or just places where there's going to be like a lot of friction, we could say. Alrighty, I think we are just about done with the fuel lines. At the return line, coming down, goes down, fuel line, main fuel line, there, comes down. I think that all looks really nice. Sorry for the lack of enthusiasm. I'm very tired, and I'm just kind of done with this. So, time to start wrapping up this project. So, fuel lines go down. Halfway down, we got these here to insulate it. That was the 1/2-inch fuel line. Actually, this stuff right here, 1/2-inch fuel line, that the 3/8 fuel line fit very nicely in. Come underneath the car. You can see them there, snake along. We got a mount here. Everything is very secure. Come over here. Coming into this mess, this is the fuel filter with some wiring loom on it just to kind of keep it from rattling and everything. And then an insane amount of hose clamps, but it's all solid. And I know that's a lot of hose clamps, but when I had the original 2.2 motor in here, this is how I did it, and it's worked just fine for the last 2 years. And then everything from here on back is what I did when I did the did the body swap a few years ago. So these lines are doing just fine for the last 2 years. And then the only other thing is this one right here. This used to be the vent that went into, I believe, the intake manifold for the when it was the 2.2 liter. So I just cut that, and then this is just going to vent into atmosphere. I don't think we're going to have any problems there. So yeah, I think what we're going to do now is get out from underneath this thing. Is we're going to hook the battery back in, back on, back up, and cycle the fuel pump a few times, and see if we have any leaks. And if we don't, I think we're going to be good to go. This is like by far the not most professional way to do this, but it's going to work because I already know that it works. It's worked for the last 2.5 years. All right. Ignition on. Whoa, we got a leak. Holy crap. What the heck? Okay. Not good. But that is technically the crossover. Okay, all right. Not great, not ideal. Well, bad news. This piece here I got from a local construction company. And if you notice, see if you can see that, that's not a perfect circle. And because that's dented, it's really hard to see on camera, but it's like flat right there. So it's not a perfect dome shape, it's flat. And that's what my fuel is leaking out of. Now here's the thing, when I bought this from said construction company, because they have like a bunch of parts, I noticed this was dented, but I was like, well, that dent is not going to affect fuel flow, so it's fine. Turns out it's not fine. So I'm hoping I can take this back up there and be like, hey, I bought this a few days ago and it's like defective. I'm hoping they'll like honor that and give me a new one, because like I said, this piece right here was $25. Now that I think about it, that is the only leak that I have found. I didn't see any under here. So far, we're doing good. That's the only problem. And really, to be honest, if that's like my biggest problem is a defective part, everything else, how custom it had to be, that's not bad. That is not bad. Alrighty, new piece is on. Just went up there, I was like, hey, this was damaged. I just was installing it everything, blah, blah, blah. I told the truth. And they were like, all good, we'll get you a new one. So now for the moment of truth. Well, of course, everything is going to smell like gas. Yeah, wow, look at that. Okay, yeah, just a crisis averted. Just a little default part, and we're back on track. I would like to just acknowledge to anyone who is going to comment like, oh, your fuel lines look bad, or you can't do it like that. Not a single leak. Nothing. It was a factory, it was a factory machined part that was broken before anything that I built was broken. So, in your face. I think this is the end of the video. Obviously not everything is put together. I got a bunch of vacuum hose because I have to redo all my vacuum lines. However, I cannot find any T fittings in this size, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to finish that today. The other thing I really want to point out is you don't have to do any of this stuff that I put myself through today or this past few days. Your regular fuel rails that come factory on your Supercharged 3800 will work just fine. And your factory S10 fuel lines that come up here, do it exactly how I did it. That is what I would recommend. The reason I ran completely new fuel lines is because I'm doing a true dual exhaust on this, and on the driver's side, the cross member doesn't have a cutout for a exhaust pipe to go through. And so I'm going to be basically modifying that cross member, and I don't want that hot exhaust right next to the fuel lines, factory S10 fuel lines. So that's why I ran those parallel with the frame. And then, yeah, so there's that. So really, this should be the easiest thing for you guys to do if you're going to use the factory fuel lines and then just make a connector right there. Just do that. That's all you got to do. This video was a lot, not going to lie. It took a lot. But, again, I did that to myself. You do not have to do it this way. So, with that being said, this video that was not supposed to take this long, we are going to finish the video. The next thing on the agenda is either going to be the radiator or the exhaust. We are almost done on this project. I'm really excited to be done because this project has just taken so much longer than what it needed to. So, yeah, I think that is it. We're going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. This one was, I'm not going to lie, a little bit of a struggle when it came to installing the fuel rails. However, you can't tell me that that does not look better than when it has the stupid, ugly rails going over top. The only thing I really wish is if the alternator was not there. I think that would make everything look a lot better. So, with that being said, thank you for watching. We are almost at 25,000 subscribers. Very exciting. I have a very big announcement coming at 25,000. And, yeah, subscribe so you can hear about the announcement sooner. And like the video and comment. I'm sure I'm probably going to get a lot of negative comments from people saying that I did something wrong, but I don't care because, you know, it worked so far. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one, which will hopefully be out here soon. And subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.